It's crazy how a simple flag can turn your life upside down. I wake up at 5:30 every morning, even after being away from the army for 15 years. Some routines stick with you. My breakfast is always the same: eggs, toast, and black coffee. Whispering Oaks seemed like the perfect place when I moved here 3 years ago. Quiet streets, polite neighbors at a distance, and rules that make sure no one paints their house purple or leaves dismantled cars at the entrance. As a structural engineer, I appreciate order. On this November morning, with Veterans Day coming up, I noticed that my American flag had faded after months out in the sun and rain. The stars hardly stood out on the washed-out blue, and some of the edges were starting to fray. An old, beat-up veteran flag? Unthinkable. I drove over to Mr. Collins's hardware store. He, too, served in the Navy. He smiled when he saw me. "Hey, Anderson, what can I get for you today?" "A new flag," I replied, pointing at one of the high-quality nylon flags on the wall. "The one I have at home has seen better days." "I totally get it. This one's excellent, made right here in the United States." He picked up the flag with respect. "You know, several veterans came in this week to buy new flags. Kind of timely, huh?" I went back home and carefully took down the old flag, folding it with the respect I learned during my service. I replaced it with the new one, which fluttered proudly in the afternoon breeze. For a moment, I just stood there admiring its bright colors and feeling that spike of pride that never quite fades away. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like to get more stories like this. I was getting dinner ready when the doorbell rang. Through the glass of the door, I saw Deborah Miller with her ever-present clipboard and that look as if she'd just discovered a serious violation of the local code of conduct. "Mr. Anderson, we need to talk about your flag," she announced as soon as I opened the door, her tone already full of authority. "Good evening to you too, Deborah," I answered, keeping the calm I'd learned to cultivate during high-tension missions. She pointed to my new flag. "You replaced the flag without filling out the authorization form for changes to exterior elements." "Form? Just to change a flag?" Page 47 of the updated HOA manual, subsection 3C, paragraph 2. "Any visual change visible from the street requires prior committee approval." She flipped through her clipboard and handed me a paper. "This form was introduced at the last meeting, a meeting that happened on a Tuesday at 2 in the afternoon, when anyone with a job would be working. Typical Deborah strategy. Deborah, I just swapped one American flag for another identical one, just newer. Still, it's a visible change. There's a process to follow. You'll have to remove the flag until the committee gives the green light." She smiled, one of those thin smiles that never quite reached her eyes. "It could take 2 to 4 weeks, or we can expedite it for an extra $75. "I'm not taking my flag down, Deborah." My voice came out firmer than I intended. "You know very well that the American Flag Display Freedom Act protects my right to fly it." Her smile vanished, replaced by a tightness around her mouth. "Mr. Anderson, maybe you don't understand how things work here. When you bought your house, you signed an agreement accepting our rules. Rules that can't contradict federal law. This flag stays exactly where it is." She narrowed her eyes, clutching her clipboard against her chest like a shield. "Then I'll have to issue a violation notice. Fines start at $50 per day after 48 hours. Do what you have to do, I will too." I turned away and closed the door, my heart pounding. In 15 years in the Army, I learned to pick my battles carefully. This one was worth fighting. That night, as I replayed our confrontation, I realized it was the first time I'd truly stood up to Deborah. I'd always given in to her demands before, removing that little garden gnome, repainting the mailbox a specific shade of beige, keeping trash bins out of sight. Small concessions for peace. But this time, it was different. The next morning, I made my coffee while looking out the kitchen window. Something felt off. It took me a few seconds to notice. My flag was gone. The pole was empty. I hurried outside, searching the yard for the fallen flag. Nothing. Someone had taken it overnight. I went back inside and checked the app on my security camera. I rewound the footage until 10:48 p.m. the previous night. There was Deborah, sneaking onto my property with a folding ladder. She looked around, climbed up the steps, and carefully removed my flag, crumpling it in her arms. My blood boiled. One thing is to dole out absurd fines or make administrative threats, but it's an entirely different matter to invade private property and steal. As a veteran, that flag wasn't just a piece of cloth. It represented the values for which I risked my life. I saved the video and emailed it to myself, making sure I had solid proof of what had happened. I called the local police station and explained the situation. About 40 minutes later, a patrol car pulled up in front of my house. Officer Thompson, a guy in his early 30s with an attentive presence, listened to my account with serious concern. "Are you absolutely sure you didn't give Ms. Miller permission to remove your flag?" he asked, taking meticulous notes. "Absolutely. In fact, we talked about it yesterday. I explicitly refused to take it down." I showed him the camera footage on my tablet. He watched with a grave expression, pausing the video occasionally to check on details. "This clearly amounts to trespassing and theft," he concluded. "We're going to have a word with Ms. Miller right away." We walked 3 houses down to Deborah's immaculate residence. Her garden was a perfect showcase of the rules she imposed. No leaf out of place, not a single flower clashing with the approved color scheme. Thompson knocked on her door. Deborah answered, her confident expression shifting to concern as she saw the uniformed officer. "Ms. Miller, I'm Officer Thompson. We're investigating an incident from last night. Mr. Anderson says you removed an American flag from his property without permission." "I'm just enforcing the rules of our association," she replied, regaining some of her composure. "As HOA president, I have a duty to ensure everyone follows the regulations." "Does the association's rules give you the right to enter private property and remove personal belongings?" Thompson questioned in a professional but firm tone. "In cases of serious violations, that would be a no, Ms. Miller," he interrupted. "Could you tell me exactly what happened to the flag?" The silence after his question was almost palpable. Deborah straightened up, her shoulders stiffening as if bracing for a fight. "The flag was properly disposed of," she finally replied, chin held high in defiance. "Disposed of? How exactly?" Thompson pressed, his voice calm yet incisive. Deborah let out an impatient sigh, as if explaining something obvious to a child. "According to the proper protocols for worn-out flags, obviously." A chill ran down my spine. "My flag was new, Deborah. I just bought it yesterday." "Didn't seem new to me," she snapped. "Besides, it was flying without the proper approval." Officer Thompson leaned in slightly. "Ms. Miller, I'm asking specifically what you did with Mr. Anderson's property." Deborah fumbled with the bracelet on her wrist nervously. "I burned it, as mandated by protocol. Flags should be ceremonially burned when they're no longer fit for use." I was stunned. "You burned my flag?" "For its respectful disposal," she emphasized, as if bestowing a favor. "Ms. Miller," Officer Thompson interjected, his tone now carrying official weight. "The ceremonial burning of flags should be carried out by authorized organizations, like the American Legion, foreign war veterans, or the Boy Scouts. And only for worn-out flags, not for new ones that someone decided to illegally confiscate." "I'm the authority here in Whispering Oaks," Deborah declared, crossing her arms. "The HOA rules do not override state or federal law," Thompson finished firmly. "You trespassed on private property, committed theft, and then destroyed the stolen property, not to mention the possible violations of the Federal Flag Desecration Act." Deborah's face went pale, but her expression remained defiant. "Are you suggesting that fulfilling my duties as HOA president is a crime?" "I'm saying that breaking into private property at night and taking someone else's belongings is a crime, regardless of your position," Thompson replied as he pulled out his notepad. "I need you to come with me to the station to give a formal statement." "This is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous," Deborah protested as she stepped back, clutching the door as if she needed support. "You have every right to do that at the station," the officer answered calmly. I noticed a small crowd gathering discreetly. Mr. Parker, who'd been fined for leaving his car at the entrance for more than 48 hours while he was in the hospital, watched from the sidewalk. The Reynolds, who had to completely redo their wildflower garden because Deborah deemed it too messy, peered from behind their curtains. Mrs. Walsh, forced to remove a swing from her yard where her grandkids used to play, paused her morning walk to watch the scene. "If you'll come with me, please," Thompson said, extending his arm toward his patrol car. "This is absurd. Totally absurd," Deborah protested as she walked stiffly toward the car. "You have no idea who I know in this town." I watched in silence as the officer opened the car's rear door for her. For a brief moment, our eyes met. There was no triumph in mine, just a strange mix of relief and sorrow for all that had been wasted. In the following hours, Whispering Oaks turned into a hub of anxious activity rarely seen in our quiet suburb. Neighbors stepped out to water plants or check the mail, all discreetly exchanging glances and whispers as they watched Deborah's house, now empty. When I got back from the station after giving my formal statement, I found Mr. Collins standing on the sidewalk in front of my house. His lined face looked more relaxed than usual. "I heard there was quite a commotion around here," he said, shaking my hand firmly. "Something about our flag." "A truly unfortunate situation," I replied. I didn't want to turn it into a spectacle, even though Deborah clearly deserved it. "Deborah took down my flag without permission and destroyed it." Collins shook his head, his tired blue eyes narrowing. "I always knew that woman was trouble. She once tried to fine me for flying my Navy flag alongside the American one. I told her, try taking it down and see what a 67-year-old veteran is still capable of." Later in the afternoon, the murmuring grew louder when yet another police car pulled up outside Deborah's house. Officer Thompson and a senior policewoman with a sergeant's badge stepped out of the vehicle. Deborah emerged from a car that had just pulled over, probably her lawyer bringing her back from the station. I was in my yard, pretending to trim shrubs that didn't really need trimming, when everything happened. Several neighbors casually showed up in their driveways, yards, and on the sidewalks all at once. "Ms. Miller," Sergeant Baker's voice rang out clearly in the street's silence. "After reviewing your statement and the evidence presented, you are hereby formally arrested for trespassing, aggravated theft, and destruction of private property." Deborah suddenly seemed smaller, her once imposing presence diminished by the reality of the situation. Her lawyer, a man in a gray suit with a tense expression, protested in a low but audible voice. "This is completely disproportionate. We're talking about a $30 flag and a community dispute. We're talking about crimes clearly defined by law," Baker responded without hesitation. "Furthermore, the district attorney is considering additional charges of desecrating the American flag, which could constitute a hate crime, given that the victim is a military veteran." Deborah's face went ashen. "This is ridiculous. I was only doing my duty to maintain our neighborhood standards. This community would quickly lose its value without my constant vigilance." At that moment, Mrs. Walsh, a retired teacher known for her kindness and discretion, stepped forward. "Our houses don't lose value because of new flags or children's swings, Deborah," she said calmly but firmly. "They lose value when people are afraid to live in them, when every little choice becomes a source of anxiety and fines." A murmur of agreement ran through the gathered neighbors. Mr. Parker, normally reserved, added, "You fined my family $200 because our 7-year-old left his bike at the entrance for 2 hours while we visited my mom in the hospital." "Rules exist for a reason," Deborah insisted, her voice rising an octave. "You all agreed to them when you moved here. We agreed to reasonable rules, not your tyrannical interpretation of them," replied Mrs. Reynolds, whose wildflowers had been declared too messy despite being native and beneficial to local pollinators. Sergeant Baker intervened with professional authority. "This discussion can continue later. Ms. Miller, I need you to turn around and put your hands behind your back, please." Deborah looked around as if expecting someone to back her up. All she found were steadfast looks and expressions of contained relief. "You just don't get it," she said, her voice cracking slightly as Sergeant Baker cuffed her wrists. "All I did was for the sake of this community, to maintain our standards, to protect our investments. Law applies to everyone, Ms. Miller," Thompson said as he led her to the patrol car. "Even HOA presidents." As the patrol car's door closed behind her, a strange silence settled over the street. There was no applause, no open celebration, just a near-tangible collective relief, like the crisp after fresh rain following a long storm. In the weeks that followed, Whispering Oaks underwent a subtle but profound transformation. Deborah's absence was like the lifting of a constant cloud that no one had realized was dimming the sun. The first HOA meeting after her arrest was held at the community center on a Wednesday night. The room was packed. More residents attended than at any meeting in the past 5 years. Mr. Jenkins, the vice president who had temporarily taken over, appeared nervous as he called the meeting to order. "Well, I believe everyone is aware of the recent events," he began, adjusting his glasses awkwardly. "Ms. Miller is facing several criminal charges, and per our bylaws, she's been temporarily suspended from her duties until the legal matter is resolved." An attorney hired by the association explained the legal situation. Deborah was facing charges of third-degree trespassing, theft, and property destruction. The district attorney was also considering additional charges related to desecrating the American flag. "The evidence is overwhelming," the lawyer explained. "The security footage is indisputable, and Ms. Miller herself admitted to removing and destroying the flag, even though she claims she thought she was acting within her authority as HOA president." "Is that relevant to her defense?" someone asked. "Legally, no. A homeowners association doesn't have the power to trespass or seize personal property, regardless of any actual or perceived violation of the rules." The impact went beyond just the criminal case. During the investigation, numerous irregularities emerged in Deborah's management. arbitrary fines that didn't follow the procedures laid out in the bylaws, changes to rules made without the required quorum, association funds being used for renovations on her own property, disguised as demonstrative landscaping improvements. We need to consider a full audit, suggested Mrs. Walsh, and maybe rethink some of the rules that have been added over the years. To my surprise, after the meeting, several neighbors who had never really spoken with me before came up to me. "Thanks for speaking up," said Mr. Reynolds, shaking my hand firmly. "Many of us have wanted to do this for years, but, well, you know how she was." "I didn't do it out of revenge," I answered honestly. "I just believe that rules should be fair and applied equally to everyone." At the trial, I watched Deborah plead not guilty to all charges, maintaining that she was just doing her duty as HOA president. Her lawyer argued that she genuinely believed she was authorized to remove items that violated community rules, a claim the judge received with obvious skepticism. A homeowners association is a private contractual entity, not an extension of government authority, the judge explained during a preliminary hearing. It doesn't have the power to seize or confiscate property. The following months brought a series of developments. After seeing the overwhelming evidence against her, Deborah accepted a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to trespassing and property destruction, while the desecration of the flag charges were dropped as part of the agreement. Her sentence included probation, community service, and an order to pay restitution. More importantly for the community, she was barred from holding any position in homeowners associations for 5 years. I never felt any satisfaction over her downfall. In fact, there was something in me that pitied Deborah. During the trial, it became clear that she truly believed she was protecting the community in her own misguided way. Her obsessive control stemmed from a genuine, though misdirected, desire to keep Whispering Oaks as a bastion of order in a chaotic world. On a rainy morning, weeks after her conviction, I unexpectedly ran into her at the local supermarket. She looked different, less imposing, somehow more human. Our shopping carts crossed in the dairy aisle, an encounter neither of us could avoid. "Mr. Anderson," she greeted stiffly, her eyes fixed on the cheese shelves. "Ms. Miller," I replied, feeling the odd strangeness of the situation. An uncomfortable silence stretched between us. Finally, she spoke softly. "I never meant to disrespect your flag or your service to the country. I'm sure you know that. I believe you really thought you were doing the right thing," I answered carefully. "But sometimes we get lost in our own rules and forget what they're really for." She nodded almost imperceptibly and continued on her way. As I watched her walk away, I realized that Deborah Miller wasn't a monster at all, just someone who let a little power go to her head, turning good intentions into petty tyranny. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like to see more stories like this. Spring arrived in Whispering Oaks, bringing more than just flowers and mild temperatures. It brought a renewal to the community's spirit that few would have predicted possible just 6 months earlier. With Deborah's permanent resignation from the HOA and the subsequent elections, the association now had new leadership, a rotating committee of 5 members, including Mrs. Walsh, who proposed significant changes in how the rules would be interpreted and enforced. Whispering Oaks was founded as a community where people could live with dignity and mutual respect, she explained during her campaign, not to be some sort of aesthetic military training camp. The first major change was a complete review of the rulebook, eliminating unnecessarily restrictive regulations and clarifying the existing ones in plain, direct language. HOA meetings were rescheduled to times when most residents could attend, and an online voting system was implemented for important issues. On a sunny April morning, I was setting up a new flagpole in my yard, bigger and more durable than the old one, when I noticed Mr. Collins approaching with a package under his arm. "Good morning, Anderson," he greeted, eyeing my work with approval. "I see you're really upgrading the patriotic display." "I figured it deserved an upgrade after everything that went down," I replied, making one last adjustment to the mount. Collins handed me the package. "The guys at the American Legion and I thought you'd like to have this." I carefully unwrapped the fabric to find a beautiful, ceremonial-sized American flag, neatly folded in the traditional triangular shape. "This flag once fluttered over the state capitol building," Collins explained, his voice carrying a contained emotion. "We got it through our representative. We thought you deserved something special, for standing up not just for the flag, but for what it represents." I was speechless for a moment, touched by the gesture. "Collins, I don't really know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," he replied with a smile. "Just hoist it with pride." Together, we raised the flag on the new pole, watching with satisfaction as it billowed majestically in the morning breeze. In the days that followed, I noticed a subtle but significant change in Whispering Oaks. More American flags began appearing at various homes. Some new, others probably stored away in attics or garages, their owners nervous about potential repercussions from Deborah's regime. The Reynolds finally redid their wildflower garden, now with a small educational sign explaining the importance of native species to the local ecosystem. The Parkers installed a small swing for their kids, and the sound of children's laughter filled the street on weekend afternoons. Even those who had once appreciated the meticulous aesthetic Deborah tried to impose seemed to find a more balanced approach. Mr. Jameson, known for his devotion to formal gardening, offered to help interested neighbors improve their yards by sharing his knowledge rather than critiquing them harshly. On one particularly pleasant afternoon, I bumped into Mrs. Walsh while she was walking through the neighborhood, occasionally stopping to talk with residents. "So how's the new committee doing?" I asked, as she passed my house. "Surprisingly well," she replied with a genuine smile. "We've found that when people feel truly heard, they tend to be much more reasonable and cooperative. And happier," I added, looking around at the neighborhood. "No doubt. You know, Anderson, what happened between you and Deborah was a turning point for this community. Sometimes we need a stark reminder that rules are meant to serve people, not the other way around." The following month, Whispering Oaks held its first Spring Community Festival, an event that would have been unthinkable under the previous administration. Colorful stalls dotted the common area, children ran freely across the lawn, and neighbors who barely knew each other discovered common interests. I caught a glimpse of Deborah from a distance. She didn't join the festivities, but she didn't show any hostility either. Our eyes met for a moment, and there was something like recognition between us. Perhaps even a silent understanding that sometimes changes, as painful as they may be, are necessary. In my yard, the flag the veterans gifted me now flutters every day. It's not just a symbol of patriotism anymore. It's a reminder of deeper principles, that freedom takes constant vigilance, that power without responsibility corrupts, and that even in the smallest communities, justice matters. Whispering Oaks is still a neighborhood of well-kept houses and clean streets. We still have rules. And yes, an HOA still exists. But now there's a different atmosphere among us. A spirit that recognizes that a place's true value isn't in its perfect uniformity, but in the dignity and respect we show one another. And every morning, when I step out to grab my paper and see that flag dancing against the blue sky, I feel a quiet pride. Not just for the country I served, but for the little battle over principles I fought right here at home. Because sometimes, defending what's right starts in your own backyard. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like to get more stories like this.